The hearing room trembles under fluorescent light, tension humming like a live wire. Then it happens. Lauren Boebert's voice slices through the chamber, sharp and theatrical. She's half out of her chair, chin lifted, finger jabbing the air. "You people think rules don't apply when it's convenient." She spits, her tone meant to sting, to dominate, to trend. A ripple of unease moves through the room. Cameras flash in bursts, catching the wild gleam in her eyes. Staffers pause mid-scribble. One aide exhales slowly, bracing for the chaos that always seems to follow her name. Across the table, Jasmine Crockett doesn't flinch. Her posture is still, her expression unreadable, that rare kind of quiet that unnerves those who rely on noise. The air between them feels heavy enough to bend. Boebert doubles down, voice rising like static. "You sit there pretending to be holier than thou while the rest of us play by the rules." Her words echo off the chamber walls, hollow but loud. Every syllable seems designed for an audience beyond the room, for the headlines, the clips, the retweets. A journalist whispers, "This is going viral." Crockett finally looks up. No rush, no reaction. Just the faintest tilt of her head, a composure that feels like defiance. The tension tightens. For a full beat, no one breathes. The narrator's voice cuts in, cool and deliberate. When chaos entered the chamber, no one expected calm to be its undoing. Flash, a camera catches the moment. Boebert mid-yell. Crockett silent, immovable. Flash again. The next frame destined to become a meme. A headline, a reckoning. The murmurs swell. A staffer mutters under his breath. She's walking right into it. Crockett lowers her pen and speaks. One sentence, low and precise, slicing through the noise like a blade through silk. Her voice carries a gravity that silences even the most restless corners of the room. For a heartbeat, time itself seems to hold still. And then, nothing. No comeback, no sound, no spin, only silence. And within seconds, the room would witness a silence no one saw coming. Rewind. The clock spins backward. The chaos freezes, then dissolves into the calm before the clash. The narrator's voice enters, steady and cinematic. To understand this moment, you have to understand what brought it here. A hearing meant for policy, derailed by performance. The committee session had started as routine. Government ethics, funding transparency, the kind of discussion that rarely captures public imagination. But when cameras enter politics, truth often leaves by the side door. Lauren Boebert, already a household name for all the wrong reasons, saw opportunity. Every flash, every lens, every microphone, all of it was her stage. For her supporters, she was the fighter, unapologetic, raw, a symbol of resistance against the so-called establishment. But for everyone else watching, it was theater, a spectacle where rage replaced reasoning. The narrator continues. In Washington, some speak to solve, others speak to be seen. And then there was Jasmine Crockett, the former public defender who had spent her career fighting not for spotlight, but for justice. Her sharp mind, her courtroom poise, she carried both like invisible armor. In her, there was no need to shout. Every measured word carried the weight of conviction. As the hearing unfolded, the ideological clash was inevitable. Boebert interrupted frequently. Each jab meant less to challenge facts than to provoke reaction. She smirked between sentences, feeding off the spectacle. Crockett stayed composed, taking notes, eyes flicking up only when the noise demanded her attention. The narrator weaves the contrast. One built her brand on chaos. The other built her legacy on control. When those two worlds collided, one was destined to crumble. Outside the chamber, the internet was already alive. Commentators on X were typing furiously. The real patriot, Boebert holding these libs accountable again. A justice watch. Here we go again. Same circus, new clown. Clips spread across feeds before the hearing had even ended. 10 seconds of shouting. 8 seconds of silence. Millions of views waiting to happen. But inside the room, the energy shifted. Crockett leaned forward once, not to attack, but to listen more closely. That single gesture carried quiet authority, and it irritated Boebert more than any comeback ever could. You could almost hear it, the crack in the armor of arrogance. Staffers exchanged glances, sensing something subtle, something changing. The hearing wasn't just about government ethics anymore. It had become a mirror, reflecting what modern politics had turned into. Noise versus nuance, volume versus vision. The narrator lowers his tone. Every generation gets the leaders it amplifies, and in that room, amplification was the weapon, until someone chose silence instead. The tension deepened. Boebert's interruptions became more frantic, her voice carrying an edge of desperation disguised as defiance. Crockett's stillness, by contrast, grew more powerful, more magnetic. It wasn't just what she would say next. It was when she would say it. In the gallery, one journalist whispered, "She's setting her up. She's not even playing the same game." Online, TikTok creators were already stitching clips, captions flashing, the calm before the takedown. Comment sections buzzed with speculation. The digital world could sense it. Something was about to happen. The narrator's tone sharpens, preparing the audience for the storm. But this wasn't about viral moments anymore. It was about something deeper, a reminder that dignity doesn't trend by accident. It trends because the world still craves balance amid chaos. And then the line, the hook that seals the promise of what's to come. Because what happened next didn't just trend. It shifted the entire narrative. Before the headlines, before the viral clips, Lauren Boebert was the small-town rebel who learned early that volume could substitute for vision. Rifle, Colorado, a place where independence wasn't a slogan but survival, became the stage for her self-made mythology. She wasn't born into power, but she understood the modern secret of it. Outrage travels faster than truth. The narrator's tone turns reflective, not cruel. Every movement has its spark, and hers was lit by defiance, against rules, against authority, against anything that threatened her reflection. Local fame came first. She opened a restaurant where waitresses carried sidearms, where the decor was red, white, and ready for confrontation. The cameras came next. News crews intrigued by the novelty, cable hosts impressed by the audacity. For Boebert, attention was oxygen. Each interview, each viral clip, each argument on live TV fed the brand she was building. Unapologetic, unfiltered, unrestrained. Then politics called, and the transformation was complete. The outsider became the headline. The rebel became the congresswoman. But the tools never changed. Conflict, spectacle, the art of saying what others wouldn't just to watch the fallout burn. On talk shows, she leaned in when challenged, lips curling into that smirk that would later define her public persona. She spoke not to persuade but to perform, every word crafted for virality. The montage plays out like a fever dream of modern politics. Snippets of interviews, fiery monologues, microphone grabs. "I'm not here to play nice," she says in one clip, chin raised. "They can't silence me," in another, voice rising over applause. The narrator cuts through the noise. She didn't just speak, she attacked, because attacking kept her relevant. There were moments when it almost worked. The applause, the interviews, the retweets. She became a household name, not for policy or progress, but for conflict. Each outrage was another headline, each clash another boost in the algorithm. Her political weapon was simple: make them react. The more they reacted, the stronger her narrative became. But over time, the performance started to show its cracks. Colleagues grew weary of the theatrics. Journalists began to predict her moves before she made them. Late-night hosts turned her sound bites into punchlines. And yet Boebert didn't flinch. If they mocked her, she'd mock them louder. If they fact-checked her, she'd double down. The narrator's voice softens, almost pitying. When all you have is noise, silence feels like defeat. And so she filled every quiet moment with sound, until the sound became her identity. Flashbacks cut rapidly, a montage of past hearings. Boebert standing, interrupting, smirking as colleagues exchange exasperated glances. Her tone always the same, fiery, defiant, unyielding. The audience watching at home had long stopped expecting substance. They tuned in for the show. In one remembered moment, she waves a stack of papers dramatically. "The American people are tired of lies," she declares. The irony, unspoken but heavy, lingers in the air. Another flash. A reporter asks about her repeated outbursts. She smiles and says, "If they're talking about me, I'm doing my job." It wasn't politics anymore. It was entertainment with the country as the backdrop. And yet, behind the confidence, there were whispers of unease. Approval ratings sliding. Allies quietly distancing. Donors asking for restraint that never came. The same chaos that made her famous now made her unpredictable. The narrator continues. For years, she mistook volume for victory. She believed that control of the conversation meant control of the truth. But power built on noise eventually meets the one thing it can't overpower: composure. The camera metaphorically pans to the chamber again, to the moment before the confrontation with Jasmine Crockett. Boebert, pen tapping, eyes scanning for weakness, preparing to pounce. She's in her element. Conflict unfolding, attention gathering. But something feels different this time. The silence across the table isn't submission. It's strength. The narrator leans in. She thought she knew every kind of opponent. The blustering, the defensive, the intimidated. She'd never faced someone who weaponized calm. Images flicker. The flashes from reporters' cameras. The glint of Boebert's ring as she gestures. The calm shadow that is Crockett on the other side of the table. The narrator's voice deepens, wrapping the story in inevitability. For years she turned every confrontation into fuel. Every critic became proof she mattered. But this time, the sound fades, leaving only the echo of her own voice from earlier hearings, replayed in her mind, louder, emptier, desperate for a reaction. This time she picked the wrong opponent. Long before the cameras, before the microphones and the bright congressional lights, Jasmine Crockett's voice was shaped in rooms that smelled of paper, fear, and truth, the kind of courtrooms where justice wasn't glamorous but necessary. She began not with a platform, but with purpose. The daughter of hard work and humility, she carried the rhythm of her roots in every argument, every stand she took for people who'd been taught to expect silence. The narrator's voice eases into reverence. She learned early that calm was not weakness, that quiet was not surrender. In a world that rewards the loud, she discovered the rare strength of being unshaken. In those early days as a public defender, Jasmine faced faces beaten by the system, men and women too poor to hire representation, too tired to believe fairness still existed. She didn't just represent them, she restored something in them. Her questions in court were sharp, her tone measured. When prosecutors raised their voices, she lowered hers. The more they tried to intimidate, the steadier she became. The contrast became her power. In one remembered moment, a judge leans back, eyes narrowing after she challenges a flawed police report. "Counselor, are you suggesting misconduct?" he asks. Jasmine replies evenly, "I'm suggesting the truth deserves equal volume, Your Honor." The room falls still. That pause, the silence between power and courage, would become her signature long before Congress ever saw it. Her rise wasn't orchestrated by lobbyists or PR teams. It was fueled by exhaustion. The exhaustion of watching injustice recycle itself through polite politics. When community members asked her to run, she hesitated. Not because she doubted her voice, but because she respected its weight. Politics wasn't supposed to be theater to her. It was supposed to be accountability. The narrator continues. She came from the neighborhoods that Washington forgets until election season, places where promises echo louder than results. There were nights she'd return home from hearings, still wearing the day's tension, scrolling through case files on her kitchen table, knowing every victory was temporary unless the system itself changed. When she finally announced her run for Congress, it wasn't a campaign launch. It was a declaration that intellect could still be louder than outrage. That compassion could still command attention without spectacle. Her speeches were direct, unscripted, almost defiant in their sincerity. "I'm not here to perform," she told her supporters one humid night under string lights in a Dallas community center. "I'm here to prove that representation still means something." The crowd roared, not because the line was rehearsed, but because it was true. Crockett's journey was never smooth. Critics dismissed her early, too passionate, too new, too unwilling to play the performative games of the political establishment. But every attempt to box her in only sharpened her edges. When others raised their voices, she let the silence do its work. When others rehearsed outrage, she embodied resolve. In one montage, we see flashes of her campaign trail, shaking hands in crowded barbershops, speaking softly with elders on porches, debating policies in high school gyms. A little girl tugs at her sleeve, whispering, "You talk like us." Jasmine kneels, smiling. That's the point. The girl's eyes widen, a moment that says more than any ad ever could. The narrator leans into the symbolism. For some, politics was an act. For her, it was advocacy, evolved. Her first term in Congress tested every ounce of that resolve. The aggression, the interruptions, the performative jabs, they came fast, often from those who underestimated her quiet. But the courtroom had trained her well. She understood something many of her colleagues did not. Power doesn't need to prove itself. It simply stands and waits for noise to collapse under its own emptiness. There were times she wanted to react, to meet fire with fire, but she never did. Because Jasmine Crockett understood that every loud insult was an audition for relevance, and she refused to give them an audience. The narrator shifts tone, soft but firm. She didn't come to perform. She came to prove that dignity still has a voice in American politics. Flashbacks cut between her and her opponent-to-be. On one side, Boebert, loud, animated, performing for the lens. On the other, Crockett, steady, present, representing something larger than herself. Every woman who'd ever been talked over. Every advocate told to calm down when they were merely being clear. The contrast deepens. Boebert built her brand on noise. Crockett built hers on nuance. Boebert sought validation in virality. Crockett sought victory in integrity. One thrives in chaos, the other commands calm, and so the collision was inevitable. Two women, two Americas, one shouting to be seen, the other listening to be understood. The narrator slows, the tone gathering anticipation. Some stories are written in outrage. Others are written in patience. But when they meet, when noise challenges stillness, history listens. We see Jasmine again, in the moments before that fateful hearing. Papers neatly arranged, her hand steady as she clicks her pen. Across the room, Boebert leans forward, already poised for battle. Jasmine doesn't look up yet. She's been here before. Not in this room, but in every space where truth had to sit across from performance and wait for its turn. The clock ticks. The narrator's final words linger like prophecy. She didn't raise her voice because she didn't have to. Her power was never in volume. It was in validation. For everyone who's ever been underestimated, the room's future silence feels predestined, like an echo already waiting to happen. And when that voice met mockery, the outcome was history. The hearing room feels like it's breathing, uneven, charged, waiting for something to break. Papers rustle, pens tap, the faint hum of air conditioning hums beneath the rising tension. The topic on the agenda has long vanished beneath the noise. What remains now is theater, and everyone knows who's directing the scene. Lauren Boebert leans forward, voice slicing through the decorum like glass. "Oh, here we go again with the moral lectures," she sneers, pointing across the chamber, her words echoing against marble and microphone. A few heads turn, some out of shock, others out of exhaustion. The performance has begun. Crockett doesn't move. Her eyes stay fixed on her notes, her pen still in her hand. To anyone else, it looks like detachment. To those who know her, it's calculation. The same patience she's wielded in 100 courtrooms where provocation was just another tactic. Boebert doubles down, voice climbing. Maybe if some of us spent less time playing victim and more time working for real Americans, we wouldn't be here debating nonsense. The phrase "real Americans" lands like an accusation, an old wound reopened. Murmurs ripple through the audience. Staffers exchange looks. The chairman clears his throat, uneasy. The narrator's voice cuts softly, almost like an internal echo. This wasn't a clash of ideas anymore. It was a clash of character. A journalist in the back quietly starts recording again, the sense of impending virality thick in the air. This is the kind of moment headlines crave, the kind that turns hearings into hashtags. Boebert smirks, sensing the camera's attention shift toward her. She leans into the mic again, tone dripping sarcasm. "I mean, really, Congresswoman Crockett, do you ever get tired of preaching from that moral high ground of yours?" The words hang, heavy and unprofessional, the kind of line that would end most careers. But Boebert isn't after restraint, she's after reaction. Every second of silence she doesn't get feels like a loss. So she keeps pressing louder, sharper, trying to bait a break in composure. Still, Jasmine doesn't respond. The silence grows thick enough to make even the impatient fidget. One staffer glances toward her as if to ask, "Are you going to say something?" But Crockett's eyes remain steady. No anger, no defensiveness, just presence. That silence becomes unbearable for Boebert. She laughs, a high, brittle sound that doesn't land. "Oh, cat got your tongue?" she says, waving a hand dismissively. A few of her allies chuckle, but it dies quickly when no one joins in. The imbalance is beginning to show. The narrator interjects, voice deep with anticipation. Every room has a rhythm, and in this one, the rhythm had shifted. The louder she shouted, the smaller she became. Camera flashes pop from the corners. Reporters whisper into recorders. The world beyond that chamber, the feeds, the headlines, the trending hashtags, are already writing themselves. But inside, time slows. Boebert slams her papers down. Say something, she snaps. You always have so much to say about everything else. And there it is. The demand for acknowledgement. The desperate need to be seen. Crockett looks up finally. Her gaze lifts, calm but cutting, meeting Boebert's eyes across the table. She doesn't need to stand. She doesn't even raise her chin. The sheer composure in her stillness drains the room of sound. Staffers stop moving. Cameras zoom closer. You can almost hear the collective breath being held. The narrator whispers through the silence. In politics, silence is rare. But in moments like this, silence isn't weakness. It's control. Second stretch. Even Boebert seems momentarily unsure, realizing that her own voice has cornered her. The performance is unraveling. Her lines, once fiery, now sound shrill. A young intern scribbles notes, whispering to a colleague. She's not saying a word, and it's working. The narrator continues. She'd been here before, not in this building, but in this energy. The kind that mistakes loudness for leadership. The kind that underestimates patience. Jasmine finally exhales, slow, deliberate, like someone who knows the power of a well-timed pause. Her fingers tap once against the table. Rhythmic, controlled. Then quietly, almost imperceptibly, she moves her microphone closer. The air tightens. Boebert leans back, rolling her eyes, muttering something under her breath. But the sound doesn't reach the mic. What reaches instead is the weighted silence of everyone realizing they're about to witness something. Not another viral fight, but a reckoning. The narrator's voice lowers to a whisper, threading suspense through every heartbeat in the room. And when Jasmine finally spoke, it wasn't a reaction. It was revelation. Fade on the frame of Crockett's calm face, her lips parting just as the screen cuts to black. The silence after the storm. The moment before history rewrites itself. The microphone crackles as Jasmine Crockett leans forward, not rushed, not provoked, but deliberate, like a conductor about to cue an orchestra. Every eye in the room turns toward her. The chatter dies, replaced by that sharp cinematic stillness that precedes something unforgettable. Her voice breaks the silence, calm, level, and terrifyingly precise. You know, Representative, she begins, some of us came here to serve. Others came here to perform. No one exhales. The words float in the air, heavier than their volume, cutting clean through the tension. The sound engineer glances up instinctively, as if to confirm the mic captured that perfectly. It did. Boebert blinks, unsure whether to laugh it off or defend herself. She shifts in her seat, but Jasmine continues, unhurried, eyes locked, tone measured. It's easy to mistake noise for strength. But the difference between the two, she says, is that strength doesn't need to shout. A ripple of murmurs moves across the committee table. One congressman looks down, another clears his throat. Somewhere behind them, a staffer bites their lip, fighting a smile. The power in the room has shifted, almost invisibly, but undeniably. The narrator's voice emerges, low and cinematic. In that silence, the power dynamic reversed. The performer became the subject. The mockery met its mirror. Jasmine flips through her notes slowly, each page turning like punctuation. See, I've spent my career defending people who were underestimated, who were told to stay quiet while others defined their worth. And I learned something about people who shout the loudest. She looks up again. They're usually the ones most afraid of being truly heard. A collective inhale sweeps through the room. The words aren't loud, but they land with precision, like a gavel closing a case. Boebert lets out a sharp laugh, trying to reclaim her rhythm. Oh, please, but Jasmine doesn't pause. Please? She echoes softly. That's exactly what my clients used to say to judges when they were caught off guard. The same tone, the same disbelief that accountability had found them. A few heads turn sharply now. The comparison isn't subtle, and it's devastating. Jasmine continues, voice steady. We are here to talk about ethics and service. And yet, we're wasting taxpayer time because some people believe attention is the same as achievement. The camera pans across the faces in the room. Stunned, unsure whether to look at Boebert or the woman dismantling her in real time. Outside the chamber, phones light up. Clips of the moment begin to hit social media. On Crockett vs. Boebert flashes across X. TikTok captions appear within minutes. She said what everyone's been thinking. This is how you end a performance with facts. Back in the room, Boebert forces a smirk, but it falters. "I see you came ready with your little speech," she mutters. Jasmine doesn't blink. "No, Representative," she replies. "I came ready with the truth." The words hang there, 4 syllables that pierce through the bravado like sunlight through fog. The narrator cuts in again, softly. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Because when truth finally arrives, it doesn't ask for permission. It demands silence. The room stays frozen. Even the chairman doesn't interject. The sound of clicking cameras fills the air like rainfall. Every flash immortalizes the moment. Jasmine leans forward again, finishing her thought. "You can attack decorum. You can attack me. But you can't rewrite the record. It's right there, in your words, in your votes, in the very behavior that tells on itself." A staffer drops a pen, startled by the echo of her tone. Calm, but final. Across the chamber, Boebert shifts again, her smirk cracking into something closer to discomfort. She glances toward an ally for support, but finds none. The room is watching Jasmine now, not her. Jasmine finishes with a breath, slow and deliberate. "Some of us believe in building, others in burning. History tends to remember which one mattered," the narrator interjects, voice deep with resonance. And with that single sentence, the spell broke. The noise met the wall of composure, and the show ended not with applause, but with realization. The crowd murmurs again. A few gasps audible, the kind that say, "Did she really just say that?" Social media notifications begin to explode beyond the chamber. Trending charts lighting up, clips being captioned, voices adding layers of analysis before the hearing even adjourns. One journalist whispers to another, "That's the moment. That's the clip," and indeed it is. The 20-second mark that will loop endlessly on feeds, dissected, praised, memed, but never forgotten. Boebert tries to respond. "You're twisting this." But the conviction in her voice is gone. The audience senses it. Her words stumble into the vacuum that Jasmine's calm created. Jasmine sits back, reclaiming her space. Her hands fold neatly atop her notes, eyes forward. No smile, no gloat, just presence. The narrator speaks again, almost reverent. For the first time in that chamber, silence wasn't awkward. It was earned. And in that silence, power changed hands. The cameras zoom closer on Jasmine's face. The lighting catches the calm in her eyes, the steadiness that contrasts so violently with the chaos that preceded it. It's not victory by volume. It's victory by composure. Across from her, Boebert stares, lips parting as if to fire back. But nothing comes. The mic in front of her stays cold, her words swallowed by the same silence she once mocked. The chairman clears his throat. "Let's proceed," he mutters, his own voice smaller than usual. But no one's really listening. The energy has shifted for good. The narrator continues, voice hushed but powerful. "It wasn't the loudest moment of the day. It was the quietest. But it was also the moment America leaned in." Cut to montage, quick flashes of screens lighting up across the country, phones replaying Jasmine's response. Captions reading, "Strength doesn't need to shout." TikToks overlaying her line with slow music. Political commentators typing out, "Crockett just gave a masterclass in composure." The ripple begins instantly. Hashtags multiply, news outlets post. Boebert silenced after fiery exchange with Crockett. Viewers across platforms feel something shift. A collective exhale. A moment of validation that chaos can lose, that dignity can still win. Back in the room, Jasmine glances down once more at her notes. She doesn't need to say another word. The work is done. The silence that follows becomes its own headline. Boebert's smirk finally fades completely. She adjusts her papers, trying to look unfazed. But the tension in her jaw betrays her. The narrator's tone softens. When truth is spoken without fear, it doesn't echo. It settles. And the silence that follows isn't emptiness. It's consequence. Jasmine looks up briefly, not at Boebert, not at the cameras, but at the space between them, where noise used to live. That's when the narrator delivers the final beat. A whisper that feels like a closing door. But what happened after this moment would ripple far beyond the walls of Congress. The screen fades to black, leaving only the echo of truth and the silence that followed it. The next morning, America wakes up to the echo of a silence that traveled farther than sound. The clip, 22 seconds long, has already crossed every platform, every algorithm, every political timeline. On TikTok, it's looped under captions like, "How to end an argument without saying much." On YouTube, thumbnails scream with bold letters, "Crockett silences, Boebert, live." Cable networks replay it in slow motion. The moment Jasmine leans forward, the subtle shift in her gaze, the exact second Boebert's smirk falters. Commentators talk over it like sports analysts breaking down a championship play. One says, "This wasn't just a comeback, it was composure weaponized." Another adds, "You can't fake calm." That's the kind of silence that ends careers. Headlines roll across the lower thirds of news screens. Crockett's mic drop moment stops Boebert cold, the look that went viral, when grace outshined outrage. By noon, hashtags are trending nationwide. Charn Crockett moment. Richard Grace under fire. Strength in silence. Every platform floods with edits. Dramatic music underscoring her line. "Some of us came here to serve." Even late-night hosts pick it up. One jokes, "That was the sound of a Wi-Fi signal dropping in Boebert's brain." Another, more serious, says, "For once." A congressional silence said more than hours of shouting. The narrator's voice returns. Low, reflective, almost reverent. The same silence that ended a shouting match became the loudest message of all. Outside the digital sphere, reactions ripple across every corner of political discourse. Commentators who once dismissed Crockett as a newcomer are calling her the voice of composure. Newspapers describe her as the calm in America's storm. Meanwhile, Boebert's team scrambles to control the narrative, releasing statements about selective editing and media bias. But the internet isn't listening. It's moved on to celebration. In living rooms and college dorms, people rewatch the clip. "Look at her," one viewer says, pointing at the screen. "She doesn't even blink." Another replies, "That's how you handle ignorance, with grace." The comment sections glow with admiration, pride, and relief. For so many who felt dismissed or talked over, Crockett's calm becomes symbolic, a mirror reflecting their own restrained dignity back at them. On Twitter, an activist writes, "For every woman told she's too emotional, this is your blueprint." A teacher posts, "I showed this in civics class today. My students cheered, memes and GIFs multiply." Jasmine's composed face captioned with, "When facts walk in the room." The narrator interjects softly, "It wasn't just a viral clip. It was a reminder that dignity, when televised, can still move a nation." Political analysts dissect the moment. One conservative pundit tries to spin it. Boebert was being passionate, but his co-host interrupts. Passion without purpose is noise. Even in divided spaces. The verdict feels unanimous. Composure won. As night falls, the story seeps into culture's bloodstream. Think pieces flood online. The psychology of poise in the age of outrage. How Crockett's calm became a cultural moment, when silence speaks louder than slogans. A media scholar on NPR explains, "In a time when politics rewards chaos, Crockett showed that quiet confidence can still dominate the feed." The narrator's tone deepens. In an age addicted to outrage, America stopped scrolling for a moment to watch someone not react. And somehow that became revolutionary. Meanwhile, Boebert's camp reels. Staffers leak that she's frustrated, demanding airtime to set the record straight. But every attempt feels hollow. Clips of her response draw more mockery than sympathy. The once fiery energy that fueled her brand now flickers under the weight of a new narrative. That she met a mirror and didn't like what she saw. On social media, her usual allies stay quiet. Silence this time isn't a sign of strength. It's avoidance. Even late-night comedy segments don't linger on her words. They linger on her silence afterward. The freeze frame of her blinking face becomes the symbol of a failed performance. The narrator continues. She had built a career on noise, on outshouting, outspinning, outshining. But in one hearing, one measured sentence, that entire currency collapsed. Because spectacle loses its value the moment truth enters the room. In contrast, Jasmine's moment turns into a movement. Her quote is printed on T-shirts, reposted by activists, even framed on digital billboards downtown. Strength doesn't need to shout. It resonates beyond politics, in workplaces, classrooms, family tables, wherever people have felt cornered by arrogance and found refuge in calm. One podcast host sums it up perfectly. We've seen clapbacks. We've seen roasts. But this was something else. This was grace as defiance. Clips of celebrities reacting flood Instagram stories. An actress posts, iconic. Teach this in debate class. A musician writes, silence never sounded this powerful. The narrator returns, slower now, contemplative. It wasn't just about a viral exchange. It was about who America chose to listen to when both microphones were on. Back in Washington, Crockett walks through the Capitol halls quietly, avoiding the press swarm. Her staff trails behind her, phones buzzing with messages of support. She doesn't smile for cameras, just nods politely, the same composure intact. A reporter shouts, "Congresswoman Crockett, any comment on your viral moment?" She pauses, turns slightly, and answers simply, "I said what needed to be said." Then she walks on. The narrator's voice closes the scene like a reflection, gentle yet haunting. In an era when shouting fills every space, sometimes the rarest sound is restraint. The question is, what does it say about America when grace goes viral? The music fades, a soft, cinematic hum lingering over the final image. Millions of screens replaying a single moment of quiet power, looping endlessly, reminding a noisy nation that sometimes the loudest revolution is silence. The storm has passed, but its echo lingers. In the days that follow, the clip continues to loop, but not as mere entertainment, as affirmation. It becomes more than a viral moment. It becomes a mirror, a reflection of what people crave in a world oversaturated with noise. Integrity, grace, restraint. The narrator's voice enters gently, layered over soft orchestral chords. When chaos met calm, it wasn't the noise that won. It was the silence that spoke. We see images. Jasmine Crockett walking down a marble corridor, the sound of her heels measured and steady. In the background, screens flash her quote, her calm expression, her stillness replayed like a prayer in motion. People share her moment not just because it felt satisfying, but because it felt right. In that instant, the narrator continues. The nation remembered what leadership could look like, not loud, not cruel, but grounded in purpose. For women watching across the country, especially women of color, the moment means something deeper. It's the visible proof that composure isn't weakness, that being calm under attack isn't submission. It's mastery. Jasmine had faced a performance meant to diminish her, and instead, she transformed it into a stage for dignity. Clips circulate of her later interview. A journalist asks, "How did you stay so composed?" Jasmine smiles, her voice even. "Because respect isn't something I owe someone's volume," she says. "It's something I carry with me no matter who tries to take it away." That quote goes viral again, but differently this time, not as spectacle, but as sermon. Teachers share it in classrooms, activists in workshops, mothers in group chats. It becomes a quiet mantra. Respect isn't borrowed. It's embodied. The narrator's tone swells with emotional gravity. For years, we've been told that power must look like dominance, that to be seen you must shout, that to be heard you must interrupt. But what if real power is the ability to stay centered when the room is spinning? What if composure itself is the revolution? Cinematic strings rise behind the narration as a montage plays, protesters holding signs, students raising hands. A quiet montage of everyday people showing restraint where anger would have been easy. Because what Jasmine Crockett reminded America, the narrator says, is that truth doesn't compete. It doesn't perform. It stands patiently and lets the noise tire itself out. In another clip, a commentator sums it up. She didn't silence Boebert with anger. She silenced her with presence. Presence, that's the word that lingers. The same presence that filled a hearing room now fills living rooms, classrooms, screens, minds. The narrator's voice lowers, tender but resolute. For every person who's been talked over, dismissed or doubted, this moment whispered, you don't need to match their volume to prove your worth. You just need to hold your ground. The score deepens into a warm crescendo, a blend of piano and strings, as the camera imagines the ripple effect. A young girl watches the clip on her phone, inspired. A teacher rewinds the hearing during a civics lesson. A news anchor ends their segment with, "Sometimes, grace is the greatest form of protest," the narrator reflects. In an era of shouting, the quiet truth-teller became the nation's echo. It's not just a political victory. It's a cultural recalibration, a reminder that America's strength has always come from those who refuse to be dragged down into the noise. As the music swells toward its final refrain, the narrator speaks the closing lines, soft, steady and clear. Justice isn't loud. Integrity doesn't trend. But when truth finally finds its voice, it doesn't need to overpower. It only needs to be heard once. A long pause follows, the kind that feels earned, the same kind Jasmine held in that hearing room. And then, as the score fades to silence, the narrator delivers the final line, the echo that ties it all together. Because sometimes the loudest sound in politics is silence. The music softens, gentle piano, a faint heartbeat rhythm beneath it. On screen, the final images replay in slow motion, Jasmine Crockett's calm gaze, the stunned silence in the room, the stillness that spoke louder than any insult ever could. Narrator, voice warm, steady. In the end, dignity defeated mockery. Truth didn't shout, and it stood tall. Clips of online reactions flash across the screen. Headlines, tweets, messages of gratitude. People saying, "That's my kind of leadership." The narrator continues, inviting reflection. Moments like this ask us to choose. Whose voice represents your America? The one that shouts, or the one that stands firm in truth? A pause, long enough for the audience to feel the weight of the question. Then the screen transitions to Jasmine's quote in elegant white letters against a soft gradient. Respect isn't weakness. It's power under control. As the music swells slightly, the narrator delivers the call to action. Clear, inspiring, personal. If you believe composure is strength, share this moment. Let it remind others that grace still wins. Subscribe for more stories where truth outshines noise and courage speaks softly, but powerfully. Cut to a final visual montage. People of all backgrounds watching, smiling, thinking. The tone is hopeful, communal. Proud narrator, final line. Because when we celebrate calm over chaos, respect over ridicule, we don't just watch history, we write it. The music fades out completely, leaving one final overlay. Join the movement. Stay loud in your values, even when you speak softly. Fade to black.